Alvin and the Chipmunks. I looked on every corner of the internet, scouring for answers. I began to question the world as I knew it. I lost sleep, I lost friends, I lost my dignity. Nothing made sense. And then, it all came together. Alvin and the Chipmunks, you know, the world famous rodents that are in a boy band. Everyone knows them, a handful of people love them, like a little too much. But I'm here to tell you something. They're not who or what you think they are. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm sitting on the toilet because this is the only good lighting in the whole house. A lot of people think that they're just a figment of Dave's imagination. And then other people think that they were made in a lab by the government.
Alvin and the Chipmunks were genetically modified in a lab.
Hey guys, just in case you're curious, if you're trying to hide from the government, start a boy band that's gonna attract millions of fans, because that's obviously the most incognito and discreet way to hide from the government. The Chipmunks are stuck in a temporal paradox at the hands of a selfish and now self-divided ageless chipmunk and residual human echo, with their code system sustained by seeded chipmunk entities dissipated amongst the parallel reality. But before I get into that, let me give you a crash course on everything you need to know about the Alvin and the Chipmunks cinematic universe. Yes, this is important. Yes, you need to pay attention. Yes, I'll touch up on everything I just said after I give you guys a history lesson, okay? I present to you my historic timeline of chipmunk events. So this all started in 1958, where Ross Bagdasarian released his Christmas song, the Chipmunk song. We basically just pitched his voice up. He decided he wanted to put a face behind the high-pitched voice, which is where he got the idea of the Chipmunks, Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. They made their first television appearance in 1958 on the Ed Sullivan Show with some puppets, and he played Dave Seville. In 1961, we get our very first animated adaptation of the show, which is where we get The Alvin Show. The Alvin Show introduced two new characters. Clyde Crashcup, this really stupid scientist, man. He's constantly trying to invent things that already exist. He popped out in one episode trying to invent the chair. The chair. And this is his trusty dusty sidekick, Leonardo. And this is the very first version of Alvin and the gang and Dave. The show was canceled in 1962 because it just didn't perform very well. I think maybe some albums came out in between then, but eventually Ross passed away in 1972. The Chipmunks were passed down to his son, Ross Bagdasarian Jr. In 1980, Ross decided he was going to revive the Chipmunks, and he released an album called Chipmunk Punk. And in 1983, another animated series was introduced, which is just Alvin and the Chipmunks. This is probably everyone knows this show. This introduced the Chipettes, a new version of the Chipmunks, a new version of Dave, and the Chipettes' adopted mother, Miss Miller. And also, another talking chipmunk was introduced, which is Harry, who calls himself Uncle Harry. But Uncle Harry was a huge fraud, and he ended up not being their uncle, and he just pretty much kidnapped and exploited the chipmunks and
Bruh.
all that fun stuff. In 1987, we got our very first chipmunk motion picture, which is the Chipmunk Adventure, which featured the Chipettes and the Chipmunks. And in 1990, the show came to an end. Again, it got quiet after that. There wasn't really a lot of interest in the Chipmunks after the show ended. They tried to make, they released a couple direct-to-videos. Oh, and then there was this, really creepy puppet show called Alvin and the Mini-Monks. Sup, guys? Josie from the future. I totally forgot to mention this. The Alvin and the Mini-Monks is damn near lost footage. It was so hard for me to find it. I couldn't find it. If you're the government, I didn't say this. I couldn't find it on any pirating website. I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't find any uploads nowhere on any corner of the internet. I had to order it from some random, I was scared because it wasn't on eBay either. So, the website I ordered it from was some, random DVD shop in a completely different state. And I thought it was, a fake website, but I found it, and I didn't like it, alright? It's not good. I didn't even want to print the photo out. Also, I forgot to mention, it ended up not even being canon! It was all for nothing. It never once came in handy. It never! Finally, we hear from the gang again in 2007, where we get the very first live-action version of the Chipmunks. Everyone knows them. We get Dave. We're introduced to Ian Hawke. I love that movie. Literally, everyone's always shitting on it on Letterboxd. Okay, you just have bad taste, honestly. In 2009, we got another live-action version, which reintroduced the Chipettes, but no Miss Miller. In 2011, we got another live-action movie, and then in 2015, we got the very last live-action movie to date, which introduced, another antagonist who's also trying to kidnap the Chipmunks, I think. Again, not really important. And in 2015, we also got our final animated version of the show, but Miss Miller's back in the show, and there's no more Ian Hawke. So in this version of the show, it's less about the Chipmunks being famous and more about school, life, home, Simon became like a lot more sciencey than he already was, and he has a bunch of inventions like this black hole opening device and a body swapping device and a cloning device and an invisibility suit. Now I really want you to remember this guy right here, Clyde Crashcup. I know I said he was a nut, but he did have a couple big breaks. For example, his completely working time machine. Keep that in mind. So after watching every single piece of Alvin and the Chipmunks media ever made, ever, these are all the notes I took of what I thought might be important. And lucky for you, I'm gonna share. Let's start with the 60s show. Alright, so first off, no one thinks the talking chipmunks are weird. As far as everyone's concerned, these are just normal kids. What's really weird to me though is in episode 9, they were like camping or something, and something bad happened, and the police ended up getting called. And there was a bear who saw everything happen, and Dave was like, ask the bear what happened. Dave got taken away by the police for suggesting that a bear should testify, as if it would just be this completely crazy and unrealistic idea for an animal to be able to talk, as if he's not literally talking to chipmunks at the same time. So the idea of the chipmunks talking is normal, but the idea of any other animal in the universe talking is really unusual. The chipmunks even have their own pets in this show. Something I also thought was interesting about the series is Dave is taken a lot more seriously. As we know in the live action movies, he's low-key a joke, he's a burnout, he's kind of a loser, and I hate to say it, but it's true. And this show, Dave is originally the star. People come up to him and ask him for his autograph. He writes the songs, he produces the songs. In this version of the show, I've pretty much established that Alvin is a narcissistic sociopath, okay? He has homicidal ideation, okay? He's crazy. He tried to kill the neighbor. He literally tried to kill their neighbor. In a later episode, he was trying to exploit him in order to replace Dave. Also, Dave is really smart in this show. In episode 25, the radio station wouldn't take their newest album, which really concerned the Chipmunks and Dave, so Dave went and started looking for other jobs, and the jobs that he was looking at were insane. He was looking into being an aerodynamic engineer, an astronuclear scientist. The jobs he was looking at were actually insane, okay? Dave has brains. There's also other section to the show where it's Clyde Crashcup. He's a scientist, and he's constantly just trying to invent things that already exist. The chair, the telephone, the wife. Pretty much the only thing he successfully invented was a time machine, which is the leap from like trying to invent fire that already exists to being able to build a time machine that literally works is actually insane. So in the 80s show, it kind of has the same premise, but Dave is a lot more watered down in this version. He's not as famous as the Chipmunks, that kind of thing. We are introduced to a new character though called Harry, and Harry comes into the Chipmunks' life and pretends to be their uncle. He convinces the Chipmunks and Dave to let him take the Chipmunks. So he takes the Chipmunks, he won't let the Chipmunks call Dave and talk to Dave, and he starts using them, okay? He's making them perform in shows, do dangerous stunts, and he's doing all of this pretending that it's a fundraiser in order for them to meet their real mom. Come to find out, Harry was never their uncle in the first place. He's a con man, and he was just trying to pay off a debt. He sounds familiar, doesn't he? Kidnapping the Chipmunks, exploiting them, calling himself uncle. What does that sound like to you? In the 80s show, we're also introduced to the Chipettes, all that kind of stuff, and we know they're like a friendly rival kind of thing, trying to compete against each other, all that. The 80s show lasted for almost 10 years. I watched every episode, but there's not, the only really interesting part of the 80s show for me, one of the seasons, they literally have a time machine, and they went back in time to meet younger Dave to help him write a song that would later help him blow up in the future. And then they went back in time in a different episode, and they went and met the 60s version of themselves, who wrote like The Witch Doctor, and then they switched places with them. So they went back in time and they were like way cool and way hip, and then the ones from the 60s went forward in time and they didn't even know who Michael Jackson was in the 80s. That's like not knowing what water is. So there's like a little bit of weird stuff, but not anything that we all don't know already. I also forgot to mention that the 60s version of the Chipmunks, when they came forward in time, they were shocked that they had a concert for themselves. And then also Clyde Crashcup showed up. In the 2015 show, the significant difference in Simon is he is a lot smarter. Like, he's smart, like we all know he's the smart one, but he is an actual fucking scientist in the show. Alright, so episodes I thought were weird. In the episode Double Trouble, Alvin sneaks into Simon's whatever gadget room, I guess, and he clones himself. So now we know that Simon has a cloning device. And in one of the episodes, the boys, like Alvin and Theodore, start to get so convinced that Simon isn't real. Like, they're like, you're a figment of our imagination. Who are you? Simon has all kinds of crazy gadgets gadgets in the show. He has an invisibility suit. He's able to create a highly advanced robot that's able to like learn and walk and talk. He has a body switch ray. And one of the craziest parts of this entire series to me, Simon has a black hole making device. Now that you know more about the chipmunks than the average person, let me lay it out for you. And no matter how crazy this sounds, I need you to stay with me. All right, we're in this together. You watched the video this far, okay? We're a team now. It all starts with Clyde Crashcup. Now, I bet you didn't think you'd hear that name again, did you? Clyde Crashcup was never just an amateur inventor, okay? That was a facade. He was the original human Simon. I'm on to you. I'm on the bag to Syrians. Yeah. Bet you didn't think I'd catch up, did you? All right. He was the original human Simon, an incredible scientist who constructed the very first time machine. But he did it with one selfish purpose. He did this to steal credit for inventions that already existed. Because look, all right, I know that there's a few of you guys watching this who thought to yourself, if I had a time machine, I would go back in time and write Bohemian Rhapsody. He moved endlessly through history, reinventing things like the wheel, the telephone, the chair, the wife. But the overuse of time traveling shattered his memory and his mind became trapped in feedback. He was unable to separate what he had actually created and what he had stolen from somebody else. And this is why in the Alvin show, he's constantly trying to invent things that already exist. Alright, he's not incompetent. He is fractured by time itself. But even in this broken state, Clyde recognized a flaw. Across the multiverse, every version of Clyde was trying to do the same thing. He was competing with infinite versions of himself. He was competing with thousands of Clydes throughout time and space and history and everything, okay? The chair you're sitting on, the couch you're watching on, Clyde was probably human Simon. Human Simon did that. All right, hold on. All right, let me take a breather. But in order to escape this rivalry with himself, he came up with a solution so unfathomable that no other version of Clyde could possibly think of. He decided he was gonna abandon humanity for chipmunkhood. He used his body swapping device that we know he has because the 2015 adaptation of the show, he has a body swapping device. So we know that they exist in this universe, okay? So he used his body swapping device and turned himself into a chipmunk. But obviously he knew if he just appeared out of thin air as a chipmunk one day, it would invite a lot of suspicion. I mean, let's be realistic. So in order to prevent himself getting in sticky situations with the government, like actually, because I mean, should we really put it past our government that if they found a talking, singing, talented chipmunk that they wouldn't take it and do experimenting on it? They probably would. He decided he was going to make other conscious chipmunks and plant them throughout the multiverse he accidentally created. And that's where we get Alvin, Theodore, the Chipettes, Uncle Harry, who was probably actually just Uncle Ian. So now he could join his two brothers and he could achieve what he wanted as a human all along. Fame, recognition, money, power. And obviously, like, what other, I mean, is Clyde going to think of that? Probably not. Well, at some point, the other Clydes probably might have thought of something just as obscene, which is why, I mean, you know what, I don't know, man, I'm not Clyde. But obviously doing something like this would collide with the instability of his fractured timeline. So when he did this, he didn't resolve into a single being. It split himself into two, which is why we have Simon, the smart one, the stable branch. He was designed to thrive. And then there's Clyde, the shell of a human, the echo of a human. Endlessly confused and trapped in a cycle of reinventing what he once stole. So Clyde Crashcup's desperation for fame, power, and recognition created one of the strangest paradoxes in cartoon history. The dual existence of Simon maintained by a fabricated ecosystem of talking chipmunks to mask his identity. Okay, I have proof. Well, it's not actually proof, it's more of like a stretch. But is it a stretch? Because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it holds up pretty well. How is there a theory like this? Okay, is it really just a stretch if I'm able to connect the dots on such an obscene theory? No. Nope, probably not. So the chipmunks are clearly stuck in some kind of weird time paradox caused by Clyde Crashcup, and I'm gonna try to explain the way time paradoxes work to the best of my knowledge. Greetings, friends. I am scientist Josie. This is a lab coat. This is a real life lab coat, and I am here to explain to you time paradoxes. AKA, I'm gonna read some definitions off Google, and we're all gonna smile and nod and pretend it makes sense. Let's talk about the way time traveling works and how that affects, like, I don't know, the whole universe that you live in if you time travel. So every time you time travel, it creates a whole new branch of reality, right? Infinite parallel universes exist, and traveling through time can shuffle you between them. And when you change the past, it doesn't overwrite reality. It creates a whole new one. In order for something to exist in a paradox, it has to be just different enough to knock it off its course. As we know in the live action movies, Dave's going through a midlife crisis or something. Like, he is always on the brink of insanity. And as I've said, Alvin is literally insane throughout the whole entire series. Now, the explanation for this that this person says is because of something called repetition compulsion, where if a person goes through so much trauma, they kind of relive it over and over again. It infiltrates dreams. It causes the person to live in a constant cycle of this trauma. Another type of paradox is called the bootstrap paradox. According to Google, this is a time travel phenomenon where a person or an object or a piece of information is caught in a loop, which basically is caused from someone going back in time and trying to take credit for something that already existed. Alright, I'm gonna read what some like smart person on Reddit said about the bootstrap theory. So the bootstrap theory is an event that has no ultimate cause due to a time travel loop. Your future self arrives in a time machine to give you the plans for a time machine, so you can build the machine and go back in time to give it to yourself or the plans. The plans have no actual original creation. This is a bootstrap paradox. I figured it out. I figured it out. I took weeks, months out of my life to figure this out. I gave up on it. It wasn't concrete. There were plot holes in it, but I got it now. And let me tell you, this final piece, my final thesis I read, y'all, isn't even my final thesis. Because when I was drawing up my final conclusion, I noticed a detail so minuscule, yet it changed the entirety. Let me just give you a quick rundown, right? Clyde Crashcup. We know that this is Simon, right? This is human Simon. We know that, right? We know that Clyde Crashcup created a working time machine, which obviously gave him the ability to go forward and backwards in time as he wishes to create whatever invention he wanted. But while doing that, it created endless parallel universes that started to counteract with each other and created an unstable version of himself, which is why he's so ditzy all the time. Throughout all of that, he still was able to recognize a flaw, and the flaw being that he was competing with infinite versions of himself, which is what gave him the idea to turn himself into a chipmunk in order to obtain fame, money, and power. He knew that no other Clyde could even fathom of something of this degree, that he wouldn't even have to worry about the other Clydes thinking it. But obviously before he did that, he probably wanted to test it on other people to make sure it would actually work, because it'd be a problem if he, I don't know, turned himself into a chipmunk and then he's just a regular chipmunk. That wouldn't be very good. Who's someone we know that Clyde knows is loyal, trusty, always has his back? Leonardo. What's a nickname for Leonardo? Now, let's think about Theodore. What's the nickname for Theodore? Theo. What does Leo sound like to you? Theo! Leo is Theo. They are the same person. He turned his trusty companion into a chipmunk first to ensure that it would work when he did it on himself. What we do know, the 2015 version of Simon created a black hole making device and a body swapping device. We also know he has access to infinite other gadgets like time machines, invisibility suits. He's able to create robots that are fully functional, right? We know he's a smart guy. Now, assuming Clyde also has these same gadgets, he was able to clone himself. He was able to time travel. He was able to do all these things, right? Now, like I said before, when he turned himself into a chipmunk, he knew it would be dumb to be the only one of his kind, which is why he planted a whole nother layer of chipmunks at a different side of the universe that would eventually interact with him and his other chipmunk friends. And that's how we ended up with Harry and the Chipettes. He needed other chipmunks around him. What other two characters are very similar yet slightly different? Uncle Harry and Uncle Ian. Potentially this is another cause of his testing. That's why they're so similar, which would explain why he's rich and he's poor. In order to exist in a paradox, something has to be slightly different. The Chipmunk song. This was Dave Seville's big break in the first show. He wrote this song, and it is what made him famous. The Chipmunks were merely an extension of Dave, but later in that show, the Chipmunks started to gain more popularity and fame. But originally, Dave was the star. And the later adaptations of the show, Dave's no longer the star. He's burnt out, and he slowly loses a piece of himself in every single adaptation. What if I told you I have an explanation for that? I want you to look at the earliest version of Dave Seville. Allow me. Who does this look like to you? Who does this look like to you? What if Dave Seville is simply a clone of Clyde? He cloned himself and gave himself a nose job, right? He wrote the song, he cloned himself and gave himself a nose job. Stay with me. He did this because he knew when he became a chipmunk, it would be very difficult for them to coexist with the other humans unless they had a way in. So what if he cloned himself to chaperone his chipmunk brothers and himself? And this would perfectly explain why Dave slowly loses a piece of himself in every single movie. This is why he slowly becomes a washed out version of the man he once was. Originally, he was the writer of the song, and the second version, the Chipmunks wrote the song, and the other version, the song just came to him in his sleep. He didn't after the Chipmunks came and seeked him out, he made sure that in every universe that there was, they had a chaperone, which is Dave. And that would explain why in the first series, when Dave is looking for jobs, he's looking for things like aerospace engineering. You're a bachelor chipmunk foster parent. What do you mean you're looking at jobs to be an astronuclear scientist as your backup plan? How was that not plan A if you're able to do that? It's not, because he is Clyde Crashcup. Now we know that Simon is kind of like a split version of Clyde. This is only half of himself. This is just a split version of himself, right? This is a clone. This is just a direct clone that he's planted throughout the same universe. All right, guys. So that is the end of the video. There is no more footage. If you wanted closure, too bad. You're gonna have to find it yourself. Anyways, yeah, I don't, you take this whole theory with a grain of salt. Honestly, a lot of it's bullshit. Like, I really did pull 99.999% of it out of absolute thin air. Like, honestly, guys, just, please don't, try to make me look smart online, because it'll ultimately make me look stupid when a smarter person pops out with, even more evidence to debunk mine. So let's just leave this as it is and pretend this never happened, okay? We're gonna move past this.